Good morning, YouTube. Warbles on a lot here. Sunday, 19th of July. Very dag end of Outsiders to be followed by First Dog on the Moon, I hope.
So I think the deficit will just continue. I don't think that there will be any reform. I mean, if you look at Europe, I mean, their debt levels before the financial crisis got to extremely high levels, and they were in good times. So, I mean, I don't see it being any different here, really.
Burdened by our success to some extent. I guess we should all let's hire a helicopter home. Sod it. Let's all spend some money. Thanks to our outsiders this morning. Adam Crichton joined you, economics correspondent, editorial writer at the Australian newspaper. Eric Jensen, editor of the Saturday paper, with you too, as was Jim Middleton, political journalist, University of Melbourne's new Vice-Chancellor's Fellow. There'll be more outsiding at the same time next week. Time now, though, for a literary diversion. Hello, welcome to this week's Poetry Corner with your host, Senator George Brandis. Oh, sorry, listeners, I had a cantaloupe in my mouth. Hello, I'm Attorney General Senator George Brandis, and this is Poetry Corner, where you, the listener, send in your poems and we read them in a funny voice. First up, we have Kelvin from Upper... Good morning, Senator. Thanks for coming in, Kelvin. Is that your real voice? Yes, it is. Right. Well, I'm going to have to read your poem for you. All right. I did it to the Australia Council. I can do it to you. Now give it here. Here you go. Thank you. Now, this poem, I believe, is called Madam Speaker Fails to Pass the Sniff Test, an ode to an unpleasant parliamentary odour. Is this the only poem you've got, Kelvin? Yes, it's quite good. I wrote it myself. Fine. I'll just read it then, shall I? Yes, please. Right. 'Twas Madam Speaker in full flight. Her giant hair gleamed in the light. She's shrieking at her entourage. The Bentley stays in the garage. I refuse to travel in a car like a bunch of mussels in a jar. An hour trapped on the M1 to drive to Geelong from Melbourne. A Liberal party beckons. I don't need to spend extra seconds driving like some sort of peasant. I did it once. It's most unpleasant. The roads are not for folks like moi. I'll fly there by a helicopter. Oh, that's quite good. Thank you. Actually, go get a pair. A second chopper for my hair. Her bouffant shrieked beneath the rotors. To Clifton Springs, don't spare the motors. $5,000 may seem a rort, yet it's a bargain. Here's the sort of transport that she didn't like. No jewel-encrusted motorbike, a diamond blimp that was refused, a golden tuk-tuk never used. Yet in the end the truth did out. The punters somehow heard about dear Madam Speaker's fancy travel, and as the story did unravel, it didn't pass the sniffing test, so she paid it back with interest. Yet 90,000 more was spent on touring the continent, a European interview for a job that she might do. My concern is for the nation, was her rationalisation, but still, the Speaker came a cropper, though it wasn't for the chopper. 'Twas for distracting all the hacks from Labour's secret carbon tax. The voters cry, it's just not fair, yet Madam Speaker does not care. I don't know why there's all this fuss. Polly's wrought, 'twas ever thus, although it would be worth every cent if Bronwyn left the Parliament. Well, thank you for that, Kelvin. You're welcome, Senator. All right, that's enough. Put him in the van. What? You can't do that to me. I'm a poet. I've been on the ABC. Help! Help! Hurry! Put him in the van. Thank you, dog. And that is it for our Sunday Extra this morning.
Well, I see. Perhaps it's delusions of adequacy and ideas of reference, but I, myself, am in possession of a poetic license. There it is, my poetic license. engraved on anodized metal, mounted on varnished wood. So if the first dog on the moon reckons that poets are being carted off in a van for telling the truth in public places, what the hell's going to happen to me? I suppose technically I may be safe because it's quite a long time since I actually wrote a poem about a politician. Flak Jacket Johnny, Prime Minister Howard, whom none would dare call a snivelling coward. He's a dance to the music of pale-faced Pauline, without the brains of a peanut. We won't go into that one. It's a long time ago that I wrote a poem about a politician. That was mid-90s. So I guess if I restrict myself to prose, I should be all right. One of the things I noticed in this media brouhaha over Bronwyn Gate or Chopper Gate, or, you know, the lady who has thrown out 393 Labor members of Parliament and 7 Liberal members of Parliament for what she describes as breaches of parliamentary code of conduct orders, using a top-of-the-range turbine helicopter to show up at a Liberal Party fundraising. Did you hear the professor of politics talking about quantum this and quantum that? It's not the quantum of the money that's important, it's the principle behind the sniff test and all the rest of it. I'm getting bloody sick of hearing people use the word quantum in a time and a place and a context where they should be using the word quantity. Because quantity means how much of a thing there is. It's the amount that's involved, whereas quantum means tiny change. Quantum physics is not about how much physics there is. Quantum physics is about the physics of tiny changes. Take a little bit of a different thing. Tiny, quantum, tiny change. That's what it means. So it's not the tiny change of the money, right? The quantum of the money that Bronwyn Bishop spent on the helicopter. It's the behavioural insight it gives into the personality that lives between her ear holes and behind her eyeballs. She has what they call a born-to-rule mindset. As far as she is concerned, her personal interests are indivisible from the interest of the nation as a whole. Anything that furthers Bronwyn Bishop's career is obviously good for Australia. Bronwyn Bishop is part of the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party needs money. Bronwyn Bishop can sign a piece of paper that says that it's in the national interest for her as the independent, non-partisan Speaker of the House of Parliament, 393-7 type independent, non-partisan Speaker. And she can flutter out of the sky in a kerosene farting heligoflopter that puts out about a tonne, maybe 2 tonnes of atmospheric carbon for every hour that it flies. Just figure out the fuel burn of the thing, 400 litres per hour, something like that, roughly roundabout, per engine, if it's a twin-engine chopper. 2.5 kilograms per litre of fuel. Comes out the exhaust as carbon dioxide because you've got to add the O2 to the C. So, yeah, it's a significant amount flying around in a twin-engine turbine helicopter. $5,000. And she sees that as good because it allows for a spectacular entrance. It's impressive to the punters, to the people who are going to be stung for money, for attending, for being seen in a photo opportunity with the great Bronwyn Bishop. It's an ego thing. It's an overcompensated inferiority complex. At some stage, Bronwyn has been made to feel not good enough, and she's spending her whole life proving how regal she is. What a great grip of geopolitics she has. It's sad. It's really, really, really sad. She wears her heart on her sleeve and she doesn't understand it. She doesn't realise it. She thinks that everything that she's doing is admirable. And she thinks that anybody who finds fault with what she's done is a scoundrel, a cad and a bounder. The sort of person who would say that, wouldn't they? Because they've always had a leaning towards left-wing, socialist, communistic, anarchistic, antisocial, deviant, dissenting, protesting points of view. And she doesn't like any of that. Bronwyn Bishop likes everybody to stand in neat straight lines with shiny shoes and salute the flag. Because I guess that's what she was forced to do as a child, and it's never occurred to her that what her ancestors' generation did and taught her to do is open to question. She's a very authoritarian person. We, the proletariat, should stand in neat rows and say, yes, Bronwyn, no, Bronwyn. Thank you very much, Bronwyn. Yes, we'd like to pay tax for you to fart around the sky in a helicopter. And she's coming unglued. Just like people with such monumental arrogance always do come unglued. You know, the favourite example I can think of is Russell Hinds, Queensland's Minister for Roads and Queensland's Minister for Racing, owner of the biggest gravel karting company and the biggest racehorse stud in Queensland. He had so many corrupt fingers in so many crooked pies that when his knees collapsed from his overweight, he couldn't retire or resign because his successor might find how many things he'd done wrong. So he kept on working in his wheelchair, and that meant that he didn't get any exercise, so he got fatter and fatter, and finally his bowels rose up and strangled his brain, just like Douglas Adams, you know. Wrote about in his Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The man died from cerebral secondaries, trying to grow a new arsehole in the middle of his brain. It doesn't matter how good you are at balancing other people's perceptions in order to get ahead and to get in front. Eventually, it all comes unglued. And then you're just stuck there looking like a cat trying to cover up a freshly laid turd on a linoleum floor by scratching at the lino. Bronnie's not going to admit that she's done the wrong thing because she can't see that she has done anything wrong. She's got herself elected to a position of power and she's used those powers to the full. She's charged whatever the market will bear, and she's only sorry that somebody thought to question her behaviour and put it in the public domain where she's had to answer for her behaviour. And as they say, it doesn't pass the rotten prawns in the hubcaps, milk going off in the sun of the second-hand car type sniff test. Well, presumably, if you took the plug out of her sump, you'd find the smell of rotten bananas to stop the smell of the gears that have gone wrong in there, or the bearings that are burnt out. And I predict that Tony Abbott's entire government is going to start hemorrhaging with similar such arrogant, elitist actions of behavioural entitlement which betray the political cesspool that he and his mates swim in mentally when they have their little caucus meetings. No, there's a Labor caucus, the Liberal Party room, whatever they call it. They don't see anything wrong with the way that they're behaving because they live in an echo chamber. And they bounce their avaricious, born-to-rule views backwards and forwards off each other until, as Goebbels said, with sufficient repetition and knowledge of the people concerned, you can prove that a square is a circle. Because square and circle are symbols, and symbols have variable meanings. And Bronwyn Bishop is the symbol of Liberal Party governance in Australia at the moment. And she has a lot of very variable meanings attached to the form and the image and the picture of her. Flutter, 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 whop, 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 noising down out of the sky to raise money for the Liberal Party funds. The essence of corruption Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.